Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1, GV Whiskey 1, Good Vibrations. Back in 1979, I believe it was May of 1979, I worked at ARRL headquarters as an assistant technical editor for QST magazine. In April of 1979, for sure I did. But I applied for a job in Miami that I thought I might qualify for. It turned out I was overqualified, perhaps, for that job. But in any case, I was sick and tired of the winters in Connecticut. The first winter, 1977, 1978, when I worked for W1AW, I called it the Winter of Storms because we had this series of New England-style snowstorms that dumped what then seemed to me a lot of snow in succession in the winter, and it was just exasperating. And then in 1978 to 1979, in that winter, I had what I called the winter of viruses, or maybe the winter of influenzas, which sort of has relevance now, but I became ill 5 times and I had to take time off work 5 times with various, to me, what seemed serious illnesses. Respiratory distress, fever, cough, but much worse than the common cold. I guess you'd call them uncommon colds, but I got them 5 times, and I thought, there's something about this environment that ain't right for me. I started looking in the ham ads in QST. They were in the back of QST magazine. Maybe they're still there. They called them ham ads. And there was a company that was working, that imported 2-meter radios that was looking for a technician. And so they called it chief engineer, I believe. But it was a very small importer of Japanese 2-meter FM radio transceivers. And I went and I applied for that job. And they said they were very interested, and they provided me with the transportation expense to fly down there to Miami and stay there for a couple days and look at their outfit. And I was just so disgusted with the New England weather at that time. Fancy me moving now to a place that gets more than twice as much snow in the winter, but far less than half as many illnesses. I don't think I've had a sniffle or a sore throat type illness of any. I don't think I've had an illness of any kind for over 10 years here in the Black Holes. According to the news, if you read that, that's going to change pretty darn quick. I've got chronic illnesses now instead of acute illnesses. I think I'd take the acute ones except for this one. But no, shut up, Stanley. Anyway, when I started work down there, I developed a symptom that I called tropical depression. I regretted having left ARRL headquarters because that was a fabulous place to work, especially in the technical department as an assistant editor for QST magazine. And nowadays meaning in 1980 or 1979, after May of 1979, when I moved down there, there was a drastically different culture, let me tell you. Talk about culture shock between Hartford, Connecticut, New England, and Miami, South Florida. It was like anything goes pretty much down there. And the weather got so hot, and in July my air conditioning unit broke So I spent the better part of a Miami summer without air conditioning. I survived, but a lot of cockroaches got killed in a very vicious manner by us technicians. We had a stuff called freeze mist that when you sprayed it on a component, it would cool it down to a temperature of minus 62 degrees Fahrenheit. If you want Celsius, you do the math. Anyway, it would cause frost to appear on the component. We used it to test for possible thermal related malfunctions of transistors, capacitors, diodes, something that would cause the equipment to malfunction as a result of what we called thermal shock. Well, I don't know exactly what the substance was. It was some kind of a gas that came out of this can. An environmentally unfriendly gas, if my recollection is right. One of these things that destroys the ozone layer. I don't know if that stuff would be even legal to use. Now I don't use it anymore. But what we used to do when we had some spare time on our hands, we repaired the radios and had to troubleshoot to the component level. We sometimes used this freeze mist on the any one of the abundant cockroaches that inhabited the warehouse in which we worked. I jokingly called myself a warehouse executive because I was the boss of for these two guys who were technicians. And I occasionally repaired radios also. And I had to answer all of the customer complaints like, why is your video camera out of focus again? And other such questions. And a lot of customers, a lot of the time, were dissatisfied because they called us when the radios broke. They didn't call us when the radios worked right. And we always repaired them and shipped them back, and they seemed, on the whole, relatively satisfied with us. But we'd spray these cockroaches and they'd develop this frost on them and they'd become paralyzed. And then we'd stop. Just when they couldn't move anymore, we'd stop spraying. Then we'd wait for them to thaw. And when they thawed out, we thought we'd killed them, 62 degrees below zero, freezing these little buggers. Well, they were pretty big, some of them, up to 2 inches long. If they got mad at you, they'd fly at your head. This is the environment we worked in. But they were all over down in South Florida, not just in warehouses in Miami. Once they'd thawed out, 9 times out of 10, they'd recover and start running around again. We had to really hard freeze them in order to kill them. We had to freeze them all the way through. These tough little buggers what would appear to be freeze to death, and then they'd revive. They'd come back, immortal little creepy crawlers. When we had spare time, we did that. I don't think we ever shipped any of them back to customers and said, we fixed it for you. Come to think of it, it might not have been such a bad idea in some cases. But in any case, I talked about when I was a little kid how I used to, with a friend, drop old, malfunctioning, obsolete vacuum tubes from a second-story window onto the driveway and watch them burst or implode. Well, when I was a 26-year-old man, 25, 26 years old, I sprayed cockroaches until they either went to sleep really deep or died for entertainment. It could get kind of boring in this dungeon of a warehouse when the weather was so nice outside, and the sun seemed to invite me to come outside and get tan. Get tan, Stan. Get skin cancer, Stan. And thus it was. That's my story of the day. Naughty old kid, okay? Naughty young man. W1GV was my call sign then, and W1GV is my call sign now. And in my native fist now as then, except on 2 meter FM, I translated so long to da-da-da-da-da-da.